Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so welcome to my Curious Brain presentation. Curiosity is an insatiable hunger for knowledge understanding that lies at the heart of human cognition, propelling us to explore, discover, and to learn. As I delve into the cognitive science of teaching and learning, I'm struck by the profound impact curiosity wields in shaping our experiences and our perceptions. But first, let's go back to where it all first began, to a place where primitive minds in the Stone Age utilized curiosity as a tool to assist with staying alive. It helped to explore uncharted waters, territories, find food sources, and keep us safe, according to Shikoka. Curiosity became a critical skill for survival passed down through our ancestors and is encoded in our brain's architecture. The reason why we like to play it safe is because our brains reverts back to the primal days where our brains like to keep us safe and keep us in survival mode. Today, we are born curious, and we don't need to rely on primitive methods of survival to be curious. The scientists learned this by examining what's actually going on in our brains. We have 86 million neurons in our brain, which use 100 types of neurotransmitters, for example, histamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. Dopamine being the happy hormone that stems from our reward center. It is found that fMRI scans, dopamine is produced in our brains when we are in a state of curiosity. This means at a chemical level, we're being rewarded for exploration and seeking behaviors, according to Shikoka. We've learned how individual neurons work at a molecular level and how billions of them work together to let you talk, learn, imagine, forming the basis for curiosity. And when we are looking for is how everything is working, what makes everything work. It has to do with curiosity. It has to do with people wondering what makes something do something. There's a way of looking anew as if you never saw it before for the first time and ask questions about it as if it were different or you were different somehow. To take the world from another point of view, we have to be able to be curious. Fortunately, we have well-developed brains since our primitive tribal days. We now have pattern constructing, cause-seeking, meaning-making, analogy-directing brain, which allows for a curious brain, according to Taylor and Mary Neal. Curiosity is recognized as a gap in our knowledge about something that interests us and becoming emotionally and cognitively invested in closing the gap through exploration and learning. Curiosity seems to involve both feeling, emotion, and thinking cognition. While interest is more about thinking, with interest, our mind is open to seeing what's there. But with curiosity, we acknowledge the gap in what we know or understand, and our heart and head are both invested in closing that gap when we get curious. Curiosity is a feeling of deprivation we experience when we identify and focus on a gap in our knowledge, according to Brown. What's important about this perspective is that it means we have to be at some level of knowledge or awareness before we can become curious. We aren't curious about something we are unaware of or know nothing about. Curiosity doesn't exist without interest, but we can be interested and not have our interest grow into curiosity. Choosing to be curious is choosing to be vulnerable because it requires us to surrender to uncertainty. We have to ask questions, admit to not knowing risk, being told we shouldn't be asking, and sometimes making discoveries that lead to discomfort. I'm reminded by the words of Albert Einstein, the important thing is not to stop questioning curiosity. It has its own reasons for existence. Existence is not simply to be a tool for acquiring knowledge. It reminds us that we are alive. Researchers are finding evidence that curiosity is correlated with creativity, intelligence, improved learning, and memory with problem solving. Albert Einstein once said, "I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious." Curiosity is what motivates us to learn what is true in our world. It comes when we feel a gap between what we know and what we want to know. It is a fundamental impulse shared by humans, and it is an important skill, one that helps us make better predictions about what will happen in our lives. Brain chemistry changes when we are curious. The piqued interest requires activation of centers of the brain called the ventral tegmental area and the nucleus accumbens, both areas involved in regulating the sensation of reward according to Cashier. So it is literally feels good to be curious and to learn. Another region of the brain that is stimulated when we're curious is the caudate, a region of the brain that essentially sits in the intersection between knowledge and positive emotions, according to Cashier. In seeking how curiosity can transform your life and change your world, Sikoka eloquently articulates the profound implications of curiosity in our personal and collective endeavors. He poses at curiosity as a catalyst for innovation, empathy, and social change, highlighting its ability to spark creativity and foster connections across diverse perspectives. I recognize how curiosity has propelled me beyond the confines of the comfort zone, igniting a sense of wonder and possibility. Curiosity drives us to understand our worlds, our communities, and even our own brains. In Shikoka's article called Stay Curious, he explored how curiosity serves as a bridge between individuals, fostering an understanding and compassion. I'm reminded of instances where my curiosity has enabled me to engage more authentically with others, transcending surface level interactions to delve into shared experiences and emotions. Through curiosity, we not only expand our intellectual horizons, but also deepen our capacity for empathy and connection. Curiosity is the emotion that causes natural inquisitive behaviors such as exploration, investigation, and learning, evidenced by observation in human and many other animal species. The term can also be used to denote the behavior itself, being caused by the emotion of curiosity. As this emotion represents a drive to know new things, curiosity is the fuel of science and all other disciplines of human study. Curiosity is a transformative force within the human experience, which requires the importance of cultivating curiosity as a cornerstone of resilience and growth. Brown contends that curiosity invites us to lean into discomfort, embracing vulnerability as a pathway to deeper understanding. Within curiosity, the willingness to embrace uncertainty and explore the unknown, even in the face of fear and doubt. Integrating these perspectives, I'm struck by the multifaceted nature of curiosity and its profound implications for teaching and learning. As educators, cultivating curiosity within ourselves and our students becomes a means of fostering empathy, resilience, and social change. By nurturing curiosity, we empower individuals to question, to explore, to create, to unleash transformative potential inherent within each curious mind. To improve communication and relationships, be genuinely interested in the person who you are talking to. Utilize curiosity as a tool to lean into the conversation, improves communication skills. When people have a curiosity expressed to them, they feel seen, heard, and valued. When you're incurious with your partner and you're on your phone or flipping through reels, instead of being curious, they feel dismissed, ignored, and they don't feel a sense of love or feel valued. So the key to improve a relationship is to lean into the conversation, ask curious questions to foster a deeper relationship. Use curiosity to make people feel like they matter and satisfy a desire to understand them. When you're a person who's in a position or a title that has more social power, such as a life coach, it is important for you to do more listening than speaking and lean into the session with curious questions. An example of this would be coach versus client relationship. Now, when you have a less social power, being the client, it is important for you to share your story and to be heard. As a coach, it's important to do more listening, as gives you a better insight onto what's going on for the client. And this way together, both feel meaningful understanding from one another. Strengthening our connection within one another isn't just a feel-good human act. It's also good for business. Fostering a supportive environment can reduce employee burnout and stress, especially when acknowledging what's happened in an employee's personal life, according to Shakota. A true sign of acknowledgement in a relationship with others where curiosity is demonstrated would be with the use of words, "tell me more." When we turn to them with curiosity and ask them to tell me more about what happened today, we display meaningful opportunity for connection. This type of curiosity strengthens our connections to others, fostering a supportive environment which can reduce stress and improve creativity and innovation. Humans aren't the only ones who are curious. Cats are the most curious, along with dogs and many other animals. Curiosity killed the cat, or so the saying goes. But can that cat truly feel a sense of curiosity? According to Celeste Kidd, a professor of cognitive science of University of Rochester, says, yes, it is true. They're just as curious as any other human is. Your brain on curiosity. Your brain goes into a feeling of urgency to solve the problem or the situation. It's not only intelligence that predicts academic achievement, it is also our intellectual curiosity that predicts success in school. Why is curiosity so important? How can we harness curiosity in our daily lives? These are some of the questions that researchers have been trying to solve for and to understand for some time. But surprisingly, there isn't very little research done on curiosity. How can you elicit curiosity is another that they're trying to understand. So in this particular study, they said that even asking trivia questions can start to spark the brain into curiosity. How does curiosity change the brain? In a study performed on a curiosity through an fMRI and asking a series of questions, there was a significant relationship between the curiosity and the neuroactivation. In the study, more curious the person was to see the answer to a question, the more their curiosity ramped up, according to Gerber on the MRI. Curiosity is linked to intrinsic reward or the brain's wanting system. Wanting systems make us want more information and seek this information. Curiosity recruits the wanting system of the brain. Does being curious affect learning or benefit learning? When people were highly curious to find an answer to a question, they were more able to recall the answer to the question. Curiosity puts the brain in a state that is conducive to learning any information, according to Gruber, the Gruber 2015 study. The hippocampus for forming new memories and the midbrain in the brain's wanting system. When curiosity enhanced learning, there was increased activity in both the hippocampus and the midbrain. Also, in curiosity increased communication between these two regions of the brain. Curiosity is a superpower that got us crawling, then walking, and now running. Collectively, this is what got us to how we fly, according to Harrison and Cohen. Together, Harrison and Cohen implored to answer these two questions. First, does curiosity matter in business? And second, what happens in situations that get people really curious? We're all born curious, but lose curiosity by the time we're 5 years old because we're conditioned by the institutions around us. We learn to limit our curiosity to practical concern. And it was not our job to wonder anymore or to explore what our parents, teachers, or employers, people of power, want from us, or to find what they want from us. Usually when someone authorizes curiosity early enough in our life, it becomes part of our identity, according to Harrison and Cohen. When you're allowed to be curious, there's a linkage growth between curiosity and professional growth. In a research survey, Harrison and Cohen found that curiosity is a core building block for professional growth. To become radically candor, it begins with curiosity. Unfortunately, curiosity in jobs are being replaced with AI. Curiosity is the shield that gives us the perpetual edge over the machines of AI. The machines never ask why. Have you ever noticed this? What is stifling curiosity? When surveyed, Harrison Cohen found that curiosity was not valued by society. Only 5% of people in the survey saw curiosity as an ingredient to prepare for the future. So sad. There's a link between curiosity and wages that a lot of people don't even think of. Curiosity is the main ingredient for learning and exploring in neuroplasticity. The power of curiosity propels you forward and sets you apart to advance in life and career and relationships. So please don't stop being curious if you want to advance in this life, and continue learning with a curious brain. Thank you for listening. These are my references and my Creative Commons license for this presentation. So I will take any questions at this point from either one of you.
I've got a couple. I think you kind of answered this one. You said by around 5 we're conditioned to become less actively curious, but I'm curious, with age, is there any natural link between diminished curiosity? Like as people get older, do they just gradually, like if it wasn't for the fact that we're forced to, would people naturally become less curious, or is that?
I think people become less curious because they're conditioned by their institutions, is what they were finding in the research, because we kind of end up being totally conditioned by who we hang with, what institutions we hang with. It just doesn't become such a big priority. And as a young child between 1 and 5, you're asking the why questions all the time. You're curious about everything. We tend to stop and lose that by asking questions more so to get us to where we're going from society, but without going deeper into being really curious. Why does this thing work this way? Like Albert Einstein was a prime example. And when he always wanted to understand how things worked, how things came together. He remained perpetually curious, but not too many people do. And they don't realize that even behind all that curiosity can open so many different doors in your life. And that's why they say it's linked to even how much of an income you can make. If you really get curious about taking a look at what further could you explore to make changes. It just, people just don't tend to do that. They just take on whatever's given and placed in front of them. I've worked hard, so now I've got this degree or I've gotten this certification, so I'm just going to do this job. And it's kind of like robotically walking through without getting curious about what you could turn this into for yourself.
Okay, so it's more nurture than nature then, really.
In a sense. In a sense.
I got a couple more, but does anyone else have any questions? So I don't want to dominate the conversation here.
Go for it, Steve.
Okay. So you mentioned how like brain energy activity as people being curious, neurons and all that stuff, a bit over my head, or actually a lot over my head. But in effect, being curious, it sounds like you're exercising your brain now. Is there any link between being actively curious and, say, reducing one's risk of dementia as they age?
I didn't find anything on studies because, like I said, there's really not much for studies going on with curiosity. So I think that if a person implored to be curious, it probably would help them. A good example one time was a man that I didn't personally know, but I was on the train with, and he was in his 80s. And because he was diagnosed with dementia, he decided to go to school and go get a degree. And he says it helps turn around his dementia. So it wasn't interesting piece of information I gained just from an 8-year-old man who chose to do that to help heal his brain.
That's actually very interesting. I like that. And so I guess the next build on this, is there any link between active curiosity and mental health? Like fighting depression, things like
that? I honestly think that if a person was a lot more curious in life, they probably would be a whole lot less depressed, because as you think is what you are. Because if you think you can do it, you're right. If you think you can't do it, you're right.
Yeah.
So, and I think if they got curious about it, they probably wouldn't be just sitting in a state of depression. But again, depending on what causes their depression, what type of mental health issue it really is behind the whole thing.
Yeah. This is very interesting because it's a, like you said, it's a field there's not a lot of study in already, so there's not a lot out there, but it was a great presentation. I absolutely loved it, and I loved your answers to my questions. They're great. It's excellent, everything about it.
Well, thank you.
I like the part there when we're looking at it. The curiosity makes the brain unsafe, but also makes it healthier.
Yes.
there is that survival component that, oh, don't be too curious because you could kill yourself. Yet if you are curious, it's healthy for you. So I thought that was neat. And then also the whole notion of when children grow up, they're asking why does this happen? And we have a natural tendency that way. And then somewhere in about grade 1 or grade 2, we beat that why out of them and say, just do it.
Yes, just do it.
And we take away, yet the brain is still requires, there's been some fantastic research articles that show that when the brain is ready to learn, it's when the why has been answered. And it actually lights up part of the brain and says, okay, I feel safe. I am now connected to the knowledge because of past experiences, and I am driving. I am now ready to take ownership for it.
Yes, and that's when that dopamine release happens.
You bet. And so it's really neat to see how that has now all of a sudden become very powerful. And I was just reading something recently where they talked about curiosity is going to overtake motivation and the study of motivation. As something, because when we motivate, we used to say, oh, there's internal, extrinsic, and Tom Pink and all those people had all these great things, these motivational theories. How do we motivate people?
Yeah.
And they found out that in reality, it wasn't the motivation, it's the curiosity we have to create safety, which is good.
Yeah.
And also the curiosity for what can I do differently, that sense of invention, and what will it do for me? So although we called it motivation, but in reality, it was just the brain's desire to be curious, because they found that in that curiosity, that's when the chemicals are released. They're not released when you're motivated.
That's right. Absolutely. That's what I found too in that research study, that's when you get curious, that's when the release, that's when the dopamine hit happens.
And so now that's why they're saying that we'll be spending more time looking at curiosity and what creates curiosity. How do you create curiosity? How do you create a safe environment of curiosity? How do you flourish it? And yet our whole school system is, no, you have to do this, 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 and this. And yet we're tired up on that degree of rigor. Well, we have to have a certain degree of rigor that has to have some expectations, or what will take over? Maybe chaos. I don't know.
It's true.
So what was the biggest highlight for you when you did this? I really do appreciate the references you put in there. It was nice to see a presentation where people actually made reference to where they got it. It wasn't like, oh, well, this here, and you didn't read the PowerPoint slides, which was so nice. You actually had a couple ideas there, and it wasn't like I was reading and you were talking at the same time. You captured my imagination, and that's really what a good presentation does, because I was with you as you talked about the topics, and I'm thinking, oh, gee, I want to look up that one, especially when it started talking about curiosity in animals. I'm thinking, oh, okay, because you see animals will often play with something. Why? Are they trying to figure out how it works? Is their whole life more curious? Like I watch some birds outside and I'm going, they're really curious. They're just poking and plodding. I'm thinking, what are they doing?
Absolutely. There was a whole thing I could have delved into the whole animal thing, but for the sake of the presentation, I didn't. I just put a clip it in. But yeah, there's a whole lot on curiosity with animals. I think there probably is more for animals than there is for people, is what I was finding.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like you said, that curiosity kills the cat, right? But when we take a look at it, when we do all the research on neurosciences, we start with animals, first of all, and then extrapolate it. And say, here in humans, it does the same thing happening. And I'm amazed at the amount of articles out now that are creating curiosity and how to use it in the classroom. So what was the biggest takeaway for you?
Biggest takeaway for me was that's the reward system of the brain. I didn't realize the dopamine hit that you get from being curious. And that is the starting point of learning anything new. stepping into anything, you kind of have to get curious about how does this work, or how do I want to create this program? Like right now I'm trying to create a coaching program because that's what I do. I'm a life coach and grief coach. And so I'm getting curious about how I can best serve and thinking about those components, but I didn't realize it from the perspective of the dopamine hit, and that's our reward center. We're being rewarded by exploring because our
Yes.
reward center comes on. And it really takes us to places of opening up our capacity to learn and to take in content. So that was, it said like I knew that, but now I know that, if that makes sense.
Well, that's one of the purposes of this assignment, this activity, is the fact is you get grounded in some aspect where you have a more evidence-based approach to what you're doing.
Mhm.
And that's why you get the references. That's why I get you to use the references in between there. So it's a slice. And really what you're doing is you feel far more confident to say, oh, if someone talks about curiosity in the brain, oh, you're going to be an interesting person to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely.
You now need to go on the cocktail circuit and put a sign around, curious.
Yeah. You get people curious about asking me questions. Why are you wearing a
Yeah.
sign?
Why do you have Y on your name tag? Let me tell you about that, because you're curious. You came over and talked to me. Research states that.
Exactly. Make a good conversation.
Yeah. So that's excellent. I was very impressed. Thank you for doing that. Steve, did you have anything you wanted to add?
There's not much I can really add. It was just excellent presentation. It stimulated to feed those 3 questions of mine, but really I was kind of blown away. Like you said, it was you know, I don't know much about this topic, so I don't really have anything to contribute. It was more, it was just such a unique topic, and I was curious.
So Steve, what part of the presentation are you, because you have to do your presentation still.
Yes.
What's something that you are taking away from this that you're going to incorporate into yours?
You know what? Good speaking pace. One of the things I do in presentations is I sometimes start speaking very fast. And I noticed she was very level. She never started to accelerate. And that's, I mean, I was well researched. I can't really comment on the research, but I'm usually pretty good at the research side, but when I present, I just start speeding up. And so I just liked her pace a lot. It was slow. It was spoken at a level that I could understand. I mean, some of the stuff went over my head, but it was explained kind of a down-to-earth method. Because I think and that's another thing, sometimes as a presenter, I forget that I'm talking to people who aren't as well researched in my area. So I like the fact that she explained it in a way that someone like me could follow.
Well, that's all part of the best way to learn something is to have to teach it. And that's exactly what you're doing in this presentation. And that's why if you look at TED Talks, they're very complicated topics, but they are able to communicate them in a way that there's something there for you.
Yeah.
And you notice how they pace themselves on TED Talks too. Like I went over this about, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 times and timed myself and realized, okay, how much time I have, how do I want to say this, what pace do I want to say this at? Because at first, you're right, I was going way too fast. I'm like, okay, I need to dial this back a lot. And so then I did. And then practice it dialed back, and then thought, well, I can even add in reading the odd quote I put on the slides if I felt like I was still going too fast and needed to fill my space of time, then I would do that, but I didn't need to. But they were there for the reading, if anything, for the viewer.
Well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
And this is your, get this all posted into the presentation area. Make sure you put your presentation, make sure you have a link to it, because I'm trying to encourage people to create the link in the posting. And then also your references, like the ones you did with the 3 to 5 sentences there, that would be great. And then I will be looking, I'll probably process your mark next week.
Okay, no, that sounds sweet. Okay, yeah, I will post this in there. And I'm gonna do YouTube link. I think that should work, right?
Yeah, just upload it to YouTube.
Okay, sweet. Awesome, definitely will. Well, thank you guys. I totally appreciated your questions and for being present. Better than me presenting alone.
Thank you for the
Yeah,
presentation.
that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, bye guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.